Greetings and welcome. Thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the month of August, which is absolutely scintillating, action-packed. First up, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what to expect, but then I will explore the month in great detail, and also you can check out your in-depth zodiac forecast for each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. So the month begins with a full moon. And this full moon is in the sign of Aquarius, which is very much about the collective. But the sun is in Leo, its home sign. But also on the 1st, we have a gorgeous link between Mars and Jupiter. So I can't wait to tell you about that. Now, Mercury is going to join Venus in a retrograde this month and goes into the pre-retrograde shadow on the 4th. What does that mean? But despite that, Mercury does forge a glorious link with Jupiter in week 2. That's exciting. We have a new moon at the heart of the month in its home sign of Leo. So it could be argued this is the most influential new moon of the whole year. However, it is in a square, a 10th square, with the disruptive energies of Uranus. What does that mean? The 23rd sees Mercury go into its formal retrograde, which will last through to the middle of September. But the whole retrograde season goes on to the end of September. So I need to explore that for you. Now, Mars is going to be moving into the sign of Libra on the 28th, but Uranus joins Venus and Mercury in a retrograde through to the 27th of January on the 29th. And then we have a blue moon on the 31st. So yes, the second of the 2 full moons in this month. But critically, all through this month, the recently arrived nodal axis in the North Node in Aries, the South in Libra, is in a pivot in a T-square with the tiny but influential Pluto right through this month. So I need to outline that for you. I'm also going to start by sharing the event chart right at the start of the month to see if we can just get a few more insights from that too. There is one that's very influential indeed. Now, I'd just like to share with you a really exciting opportunity. Year 2023 is absolutely speeding by and 24 is racing towards us. If you order your year 2023 personal horoscope forecast based on your unique birth data now, I'll provide for you and prepare the rest of year 2023 free of charge. But also in my special package of 30% off, you can get your character analysis life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into the patterns that are played out in your life and help you to get a more intimate understanding of how to work with these. Please see below for more information on this. Also, I'd just like to say, if you'd like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please also see the link below to subscribe. So first up, I'm sharing the chart wheel for August as August begins, so we can see where all the players are. It begins with Chiron and the North Node in Aries in house 1, Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus in 2, the Sun in its home zone of Leo in 5, along with the retreating retrograde Venus. Mercury also at home in Virgo in 6, along with the strident energies of Mars. Then right at the top of the chart we have the moon applying to the position of Pluto in house 10, Pluto in a retrograde. Now, why is this when we have a full moon on the 1st of August? Well, it's because the moon is going to be moving into its opposition in the early evening of the 1st of August, when it will be in Aquarius and it is opposite the sun. We also have Saturn in the sign of Pisces in retrograde, along with Neptune in house 12. So the big takeout from all of this, to be honest, is the moon applying to Pluto and Venus in a quincunx with Pluto and the moon. So Venus is very much about our desire to enjoy life in the sign of Leo, can be very much attuned to glamour, sociability, and of course romance. But it's suggesting that there could be some politics linked to those areas. And of course Venus can also be about money, and the sign of Leo can be about speculation and risk. So because Pluto is in the most worldly part of the chart, how we connect to the world, and can be to do with things that are hidden, could be revealed, can be to do with leverage, and of course transformations. So a lot of intensity is possible this month, with the moon being right close to Pluto but applying back to that position of Venus. So I think our relationships and our financial situation is going to be quite highly charged. But the other wonderful thing to take out from this month is the position of Jupiter in its angle to Mars. They're exactly in a trine as this month begins, and the energy of that's going to go through the first week of the month. So that gives you the structure of this month, a very enterprising and positive and thrusting angle between Jupiter in the sector of everyday money and self-worth, and Mars in Virgo, very much about precision, thrust, but not being quite so needing of attention in Virgo, more about providing services and concentrating on the processes and the details. But I feel that when it comes to the big issues around money and relationships, there could be quite a lot of politics coming from the energy of the moon applying to Pluto and making their way jointly back to the position of Venus in a 150-degree quincunx. So as we go into later that day, of course, we have the full moon, and it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is very much to do with the collective. The sign of Leo is very much to do with our need to individually express ourselves. We could find ourselves over the next couple of weeks needing to manage our time shrewdly. We can't please all of the people all of the time, and we may have to prioritize. Also, if we feel that we're too caught up in people pleasing, Aquarius, maybe the sun in Leo is asking us to be more single-minded, particularly if we've got creative projects that we're really passionate about. In a love situation, it could be that one partner feels that the other is too focused on their interests and their friendships and not enough on the primary relationship. Then again, it's possible that some kind of positive development around a friendship can make its way into something closer, although that could affect how other people view the situation. Now, I mentioned before about that glorious link between Mars and Jupiter. It is exact on the first day of this month, but it is also in a great angle for the first week. So we can come into this month with a desire to get to grips with some of the details that seem to stutter when Mars was in an opposition with Saturn for a long period in July, but particularly when that aspect peaked on the 20th. That was creating a lot of frustration. But also, of course, the nodal axis moved, the true nodal axis, on the 17th of July. And because that moves relatively slowly, if progressively in terms of clockwise, it's applying to the position of tiny Pluto right through to the end of this month, when it starts to invert inside 3 degrees, so the pressure can lessen. So essentially, I feel that the North Node in Aries is asking us to be more conscious of our individuality. The South Node in Libra is perhaps where we've all been so caught up, in my humble opinion, of connecting through social media, but in some ways losing our sense of self. So what the North Node and Chiron are asking us to work on is our sense of identity, particularly with Chiron in a retrograde too, as this month begins. However, from the 1st to the 4th of this month, there is an opposition between Mercury and Saturn. This could affect our nervous energy a little bit. We may feel a bit inhibited. Mercury, of course, in Virgo can be very focused on the details, and perhaps the more emotional side of our situation can impact on how we handle practicalities, and that becomes exact on the 2nd. But on the 4th, Mercury does go into its pre-retrograde shadow. It doesn't emerge from the post-retrograde shadow until the end of September. So with Mercury being in the sign of Virgo, about those details, but about appointments, about the strands that sometimes can be a little boring that we have to grapple with, like our paperwork, making sure that we're really up to date and organised. That's what Mercury in this slowing down period is asking us to be conscious of. But you know, in the first 10 days of this month, the Sun's in a square with Jupiter. This is one of the squares that I think can be seen in a more benevolent light, which is interesting, with Jupiter being the planet of the greater benefic, if you like, so the same core word. And it's because the Sun in Leo can be very generous, and Jupiter in Taurus can be very much about resources. But when it comes to our professional situation, if we see the Sun as house 1, Jupiter therefore is in house 10. If we apply for a job, or we're doing a presentation, or we have our own business and we're trying to cultivate a new contact, I think it's important not to overpromise. So we can show that enthusiasm and warmth that comes from Jupiter, and that essential belief that we can deliver, but it's important to be very measured in what we say, because someone could hold us to it. But if you are someone who's very much into helping good causes, that side of your nature can be beautifully emphasized in the first 10 days of this month. Now in week 2, despite Mercury's shadow slowdown, it's forging a sensational link to Jupiter. So we've got the planet of commerce, Mercury, connecting to the planet of trade, if you like, Jupiter, especially to do with buying and selling. And those two are forging a very connected relationship. So, you know, if you are someone who wants to improve your situation, and you want to sell things, you want to be more entrepreneurial, that's a very enabling link indeed. Now, the 10th to the 14th sees a very special event start to build up. What's happening here is the Sun and Venus are closing together, and by the 13th we have a Cazimi. Now this Cazimi on this occasion sees Venus this side of the Sun because it's in retrograde. Now Cazimi in traditional astrology is when the warmth of the Sun magnifies the energy of the other planet. Now Venus clearly about relating, but also money, and despite the fact that at the start of this month it was in that rather grating angle to Pluto and the Moon, this can really see extra radiance. So if you're attending a social event around that time, or going on a first date, despite Venus's retrograde, I think that this does augur well to create a very special appreciation of maybe one another's qualities, but also if you're really interested in the arts or theatre or performance or watching bands, you could attend something around this time that's very heartwarming indeed. Now the 12th to the 19th does, however, see the Sun in a square with Uranus. So that's mirroring the right angle with Jupiter in Taurus, but of course Uranus is a much more disruptive player, and it's in its fall in the sign of Taurus. And by the 16th we have the new moon, the most important new moon of the year as far as the Sun's concerned. So this has given us an opportunity to really set our intentions in terms of what we really desire, what we really want that would make our heart's desire flow. So, you know, whether it is a lovely holiday, a magical date, it is an improvement to our children's situation if you have them, whether it is to do with just feeling some joy in your life. So where does Uranus fit into this? Well, I think it's saying don't be too impulsive, particularly around resources. Important to understand that both are in fixed signs, and because Uranus is so restless, because it's fixed in a fixed, very fixed energy of Taurus, and the Sun in Leo can be very proud, you can get real resistance there, so that can create some tension. So over the next month, even if we set our hopes on something that is different, more creative and novel, Uranus, we have to be aware that there could be some resistance that we encounter. Now, on the 23rd, the Sun makes its way into Virgo, joining up with the slowing down Mercury and initially at this stage Mars. But I just want to explain a little bit more about that position of the North Node right at the start of the month in the T-square with Pluto. So what the individuality of Aries is calling out to the energy of the North Node is for us all to really make it clear who we are, but the energy of Pluto is asking us to conform to someone else's expectation, and that can create a tension. But the thing is, the North Node actually forges a beautiful link with Venus through the first week of this month. So if we're directing our energies to the right situation where we're really getting in touch with what our heart wants, very much to do with Leo energy, I think we can really work that North Node to our advantage despite the more conservative resistance of the position of Pluto. But then the Sun moves into Virgo for the first time in 11 months. The sign of Virgo very much to do with purity, discrimination, making sure that we're as organised and ordered as possible, but also looking for marginal improvements around diet, nutrition, exercise, doing a job that gives us personal satisfaction, yet can also be of help to others. The 6th house in Virgo very much of being of service, but not servile. But on the same day, Mercury goes into a retrograde through to the middle of September and in shadow through to the end of September, as I mentioned before. So despite the virtue of the Sun, some things could slow down. So anything to do with appointments, if you've got annual inoculations due for animals, check out exactly the date, because the 6th house is also animals. You could have some contact with uncles and aunties or people who play those kind of roles in your life. Very 6th house. The 6th house is also about the internal structure of our everyday world. So if you're someone like me who's rather disorganized in the domestic sphere, a great time to get the Hoover out, put some clothes away, declutter a little bit, because that actually can be very cleansing to our soul as much as making our physical space work that much more efficiently. But Mercury retrograde can of course cause glitches and irritations, but it also can create opportunities. So where in your life do you feel you can be more virtuous? I'm not saying that you shouldn't have some delights and some calorific goodies, some treats, but if things are a little bit out of balance and kilter, Mercury's asking you to think, Mercury, about the way you can get practical results, Virgo, again, to create an improvement, even if it's a small marginal improvement. The 28th, however, sees Mars punch its way into the sign of Libra. Interesting location. Next 7 weeks. The reason for this is that Mars is technically detrimented in the sign of Libra, but when it comes to our relationships, this can give us a desire to create better balance, Libra, and fairness, and also be heard. But it's important not to be reactive. So the position of Mars in Libra is very good to work on contracts. If you're someone who enjoys team sports, or particularly a sport where you're playing with one other person, like badminton, squash, tennis, that can be very good for those combative type of pursuits. Or if you're someone who's more into gaming or chess, you can still enjoy that competitive spirit, but try to keep things on a nice even keel. The 29th, however, does see Uranus go into a retrograde in Taurus right through to January 27th, 24. Now Uranus is already, as we know, not at its best in Taurus, so I think this is asking us to think again. Are there ways in which we're using resources, the planet's resources or our own financial resources, where we could think again by using the innovation of Uranus to think outside the box to find improvements? Then that brings us to the blue moon, which occurs on the 31st. Now this supermoon is in the sign of Pisces, and it's also quincunx Mars. So Pisces energy very much about the spiritual, psychological, and more ethereal sphere, the Sun and obviously Mercury in its retrograde in the sign of Virgo, about the practical and more tangible sphere. So they're competing to see if something's out of balance. But with the angle, the quincunx with Mars, Mars is there as an interlocutor in a way, angling, it's actually in a semi-sextile to the position of the Sun, but the position to the blue moon in Pisces is also connecting to Saturn. So I think it's quite a serious blue moon, to be honest. And if we're not taking our emotional and psychological well-being seriously enough, the following 2 weeks, which take us in to the first half of September, could see things be quite bumpy. So we're being really pushed by Mars and Saturn in resistant positions to one another, not to be too fearful, really, of looking at those vulnerabilities and anxieties and concerns which do feed into our physical well-being and health. So quite a fascinating supermoon, sturgeon blue moon at the end of the month, very close to Saturn, but in that complex angle to Mars. So as this month draws to a close, after all that warmth and sun of the sign of Leo, particularly with the Cazimi between the Sun and Venus, it's very magnifying in the heart of the Sun. Really a beautiful concept. We do have to tackle some practicalities and some emotional realities as this month draws to a close. Now please see beneath this video and you can get your super in-depth zodiac sign forecast from Aries through to Pisces. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you all the best for August. Please like, comment, share or subscribe.